the idea that somehow we go back now history, whether it's 100 years ago or 200 years ago to the Founding Fathers or 1,000 years ago to the Crusades, and what we're doing is we're projecting our liberal values back on history. What we don't like today, what we in our enlightened benevolences have come to reject, that has to be the filter, the only filter through which we see history. So to be good historians, I think what we need to do is recognize that everybody, there was not a culture in the whole wide world that was not militaristic. There were no peaceable cultures. You could cite various sects, for instance, of Christianity or Buddhism that eschewed violence, but they were part of a larger movement that was protected by military might. Certainly with Christianity, that was true. Judaism, it was true. All the major religions. So war was the norm. Conquering territory was the norm. We recognize that now as a bad thing, but for them, they didn't. So judging them first and foremost, whether it's just judging the Islamic Crusaders or judging the European Crusaders, simply by the politically correct lens of war is bad, John and Yoko, let's all sit around and sing Kumbaya, judging history by that lens, this is what the Soviets did, the Marxist dialectic in history. Rewrite history so it's favorable to your political cause. If we recognize, and you have to recognize this, because this is how the left wins these arguments, by cutting us off from the totality of history. Let's just focus on the evils of the West, the evils of the white male, the evils of the British or the Christian or the American soldier versus the Indian. That's how they do it. If we understand and accept the premise that colonialism, genocide, oppression, tyranny, these were aspects of almost every single human culture that's ever been around. We accept that historically unalterably true premise, then it makes their heads explode when you point out, so they're really mad progressives, that the West just did what everybody else was doing better. Yeah, we hear about the evils of British colonialism all the time. This is the bias you're talking about. And yet, as bad as the British were, think about the entire Hindu custom of the untouchable, right? For about 1,000 years, an entire class, like the overwhelming majority of the population of India was considered untouchable. You couldn't touch them. They were diseased, right? They were left in squalor and poverty and misery. Whatever you say about the British, they ended a lot of that stuff. The British, for all of their methodical ways and their occasional brutality, were much, much better conquerors, much, much better rulers. You couldn't have had Gandhi in the old Indian system, right? But you could have had him in those British law schools that he went to as a colonialist who visited England.
The Christian West was involved in the slave trade and in the practice of slavery post-Roman Empire for the shortest amount of time relative to Jewish cultures or Islamic cultures. And of course, it was the Christian European West, white males, the Satans of history, who actually ended the practice of slavery, not just in the West, not just in Europe, but worldwide through the agency of the British Empire and the power of the British Navy. So, white males involved in slavery for the least amount of time, found it morally abhorrent, ended slavery worldwide, and now who's the only group ever blamed for slavery? It is one of these horrible things in history that no good deed goes unpunished. And lo, one must be aware when one sets out upon the journey to sail around the world, you will be shot at for all of the good things that you do, and if you do bad things, well, you're considered dangerous, so people will cover up and protect everything that you've done. It is, one of the trials and tribulations that occurs in the lives of good people and decent cultures. There's open-air slave markets now in Libya. They've emerged in Libya. Some of the migrants are being snatched up, the women are being raped and sold. And where are all the people who are anti-slavery? No. The important thing is what happened among 4 or 5% of whites and a lot of blacks slave owners in America 150 years ago. That's the only important thing about slavery. The fact that it's currently going on in Libya apparently doesn't matter because you can't guilt Libyans into giving you money.